Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. This is Naeem Mushtaq here. And today we are honored and blessed to have Brother Osama Nazzal, DG Palestinian Broadcasting Authority from occupied Palestinian territory from Palestine. I was recently watching on Pakistan national TV regarding the Israeli aggression on Palestinian people again. And situation after every few months is worse to worse to worse to worse. So I thought to reconnect with Brother Osama and see what are the latest updates on the Palestinian issue. Brother Osama, how are you?
Most welcome. How are you, Naeem?
How is everything? What's happening in the Palestine right now?
What's happening in the Palestinian territory is what has always been happening since the start of the Israeli occupation for Palestine. A
Mhm.
nation resists, justice denied. The Palestinian people's struggle for justice and freedom
Mhm.
is going ahead, and the Palestinian determination to enjoy justice, freedom, and independence is unshakable. So the
Mhm.
Palestinian people are fighting for their dignity, for their rights, in order to make their voice heard to the world, to their friends, to their advocates, and at the same
Mhm.
time,
Mhm.
to their enemies, that life can't continue this way under the rule of the Israeli colonial settler apartheid regime.
Mhm.
It is impossible, Mr. Naeem, to live in your country without having the freedom to move from one village to another, from your
Mhm.
town to the city.
Mhm.
It is not imaginable to have such a situation when your children leave you in the morning for school.
Mhm.
You can't make sure that they are going to return safely and peacefully because Israeli occupation soldiers who are storming the Palestinian towns and cities and refugee camps all the time
Mhm.
shoot spontaneously and randomly and might kill them anytime at any spot. And this happened this year many times.
Mhm.
What's happening is really a fully fledged Israeli aggression against the Palestinians. But what
Mhm.
makes this aggression different from the past is that, and this is a very important point.
Mhm.
In the past, the Israeli occupation army was in charge of storming the Palestinian towns, killing, injuring, and detaining Palestinian youths.
Mhm.
But today, we have a compounded problem. We
Mhm.
have the Zionist Israeli militia, the Israeli colonizers,
Mhm.
who are armed to the hilt,
Mhm.
and they practice all forms of violence against the Palestinians
Mhm.
with full backing from the Israeli official government, which makes the situation really much worse than ever before.
Mhm. It's a sort of a new form of covered operations in form of a civilian clothes.
Yes, Israeli forces today use different methods of pursuing Palestinians. For example, they get into the Palestinian cities and mainly the Palestinian city of Jenin, where I live, in
Mhm.
the form of undercover forces with civil clothes, with Palestinian
Mhm.
cars plates in order to keep anonymous. And
Mhm.
they target Palestinian youth. And when they make sure that they killed a certain youth or a certain number of youth, then the Israeli official and formal military get
Mhm.
into the city in order to secure their withdrawal and at the same time continue its violence and its attack on the Palestinians. While I'm speaking to you, Mr. Naim,
Mhm.
I'm speaking from the town where we lost just yesterday
Mhm.
three young men.
Okay.
The Israeli snipers shot two in a spot, and a Palestinian worker was on his way to work. He tried to go and take the injured youth who was bleeding on the street to a safe area in
Mhm.
order to take him to hospital or a clinic, while the Israeli snipers shot dead the Palestinian worker. And I'm sure that the Israeli snipers were aware that that Palestinian youth was having nothing to do with the resistance, for example, or with the fight against the Israeli occupiers. He was going to work. But the problem is that the Israeli occupation army is implementing the policy of its government, which is the policy of shoot to kill. These are the instructions that the Israeli soldiers have. It was really heart-wrenching and heartbreaking a week ago when we saw the Israeli soldier catching a Palestinian youth in a small village called Hiwara near Nablus in the north of the occupied West Bank. And then he dropped him to the ground and he snatched his pistol from his pocket and riddled that young man with bullets. It was unimaginable. It is a kind of lynching Palestinians on the street, and this reminds us really of the dusty ages when there was no values and no morality at all. This is the way that the Israeli occupation forces are treating the Palestinians these days. Just also yesterday, 16-year-old Palestinian boy, Dia Rimawi, he is still Israeli soldiers riddled his body with bullets, claiming that he was throwing stones at them. Throwing stones. It's a joke. You know, the Israeli forces use jeeps and vehicles that are armored, and they can protect the Israeli soldiers not from bullets or even from bombs. So what would this stone do to the soldiers who are using such armored vehicles? So it is not a matter of the Israeli soldiers' security or safety, because the stones would not harm them at all. Especially you are talking about 16-year-old child.
Exactly.
So this shows that Israel has a decision to escalate its aggression on the Palestinians and to implement the policy of the Israeli government, which is shoot to kill. So this is the situation in the field, in addition to the threats that we hear from the newly elected Israeli officials, mainly the Israeli extremist, who was classified or accused of being a terrorist, condemned of being a terrorist by an Israeli court years ago. Ben Gvir. And Ben Gvir was just yesterday talking to the Israeli official media that he is going to support the Israeli army to kill more Palestinians, and he is going to force Palestinians out of their villages and towns and keep them live in small and narrow Bantustans, just the situation that South Africa has gone through during the apartheid era. So the situation that the Palestinians have now is very complicated, is very bad. And when the new government comes in by Netanyahu as prime minister, Smotrich and Ben Gvir as key ministers in that government, I think that the Palestinians are going to have more catastrophic situation.
Brother Osama, I just read in the news that the Chinese Prime Minister just met Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian Prime Minister, in Jeddah, in Saudi Arabia, during his visit.
Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas.
Yeah, I remember. So do you think there is a hope that China will join hands with the Palestinian cause and to play some important role in the United Nations and also on the grounds? Because I think we can see the Muslim support for the Palestinian is mostly on a verbal side. But now I think the economic power is shifting towards new blocks are being built. So maybe you think we should have more focus also on the Chinese side to have some support from them?
Yeah, if we discuss the Palestinian-Chinese relationship, it has always been good.
Okay.
And the Chinese government, Chinese state, always voiced their support for the rights of the Palestinian people, whether at the bilateral level during the meetings between the Chinese president and the Palestinian president, Abu Mazen, or at the international chambers like in the United Nations. China has always been on the side of justice for the Palestinian people. But what is demanded from the world powers is not only lip service support or support at the United Nations for taking resolutions in favor of the Palestinian people. What is needed now is support for the implementation of the resolutions of the United Nations related to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Exactly.
So the Arab-Chinese summit, which is being held these days in the Arab Gulf, is of high importance, and I think it comes in the context of the international power and political relations shifting, and this is related to the Russian-Ukraine war and the whole political situation in Europe and how the United States is handling the conflict there, and at the same time how catastrophe and suffering of the Palestinian people, because you know that Israel receives billions of dollars of the United States government in military aid and in other forms without any regard to the Israeli violations of the Palestinians' human rights. You know, the Palestinians have accepted the United States to be the mediator of talks between Israel and the PLO for decades, for more than 20 years. But the United States proved its failure and its bias and its intention to keep negotiations for the sake of negotiations and not to achieve any of the Palestinians' rights. Under such situation, and after everything is clear, of course, the Palestinians have to look for other options, and the Palestinian president's speech today at the Arab-Chinese summit was of high importance and was clear when he demanded that the UN resolutions must be implemented, and he demanded that the world should boycott any Israeli government that does not recognize the international legitimacy and the government that does not recognize that peace is the only outlet for both the Palestinians and the Israelis of this cycle of violence.
I think the US and Israel relationships are of less political nature and more of a theological nature. There's a theological marriage between Christian Zionism and Jewish Zionism. That's why they see each other's support as a part of their theology and religion. This is above the political level. But I think now China coming into the scene also, and the CPEC, the Pakistan trade route, and the Gulf interest and the Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, China, Pakistan, this new building block of economics and political power, I think this will be merging as a new political power to have influence on the Middle East. And I think your surrounding states like Jordan and the other areas, they also need some external support, military and I would say diplomatic support, to have more pressure on the international powers. Because what I see sometimes in the news, I might be wrong, but I see sometimes there is still a sense of crusades in the Western minds. The crusades mindset is still there, but the methodology is changed. Now they speak through political language to fight religious wars. Before they used to have a theological and religious terminology to fight religious wars, but now they use democratic, democracy, and political terminologies to have implement their same religious, intentions. So sometimes, unless we Muslim learn to understand the intentions behind their political and legal terminology, the intentions are religious, but the display of those intentions are in more of a political language, and they make it sounds like a political issue, whereas this is not a political issue. So I hope this is my you know this is my understanding of the current affairs. But living in Palestine on a daily basis with this fear, and as you said, the children go to school, but there is no surety they will come back safe and sound. This kind of sense of fear always, damage the overall spirit of a nation and of the people as well. But I think Palestinian people are still very courageous people to maintain a sense of dignity, to maintain a sense of historical identity in the region. How do you maintain that sense when you see less support from your Muslim countries, only the talking? And because I think at the front line, the Palestinians are there, and at the back, whatever support is there is at the back. Whether it's verbal support or sometimes support in form of aid, because if your loved one is killed and then you get the support or aid, it matters nothing once your loved one is gone. So how do you
Yeah.
maintain that sense of courage in all these areas? I mean, I was wondering about you understand what I mean? I'm trying to focus on the Palestinian mind of living on a daily basis.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Since the start of the Israeli occupation, when Israel was created in place of the Palestinians in
Yeah,
1948, you
yeah.
know,
Mm,
that they set on fire 500 Palestinian villages, they killed thousands of Palestinians, and they expelled about 750,000 Palestinians from their land.
mm,
These people were living in their cities, they were living in their villages, they have their orchards and their olive groves, they were doing well, they were having their trade with the international
mm,
countries, and it was a matter of days they became refugees in the neighboring Arab countries and around the world. That was a big shock that still continues. And since that time, the Palestinian slogan was clear that the strategic depth of the Palestinian cause is the Arab and the Muslim world.
mm,
But what is disappointing that the Arab and Muslim world did not provide the support the Palestinians deserve to liberate their country.
mm,
Either this support was limited to financing the Palestinian revolution
mm,
or lip service. And even when we talk about the financial support for the Palestinians, especially these days, it is very little if it exists at all. And
mm,
that's why the Palestinian economic situation is going down day after day because of the lack of support from the
mm,
Arab and Muslim world. But
mm,
at the same time, it's very important to differentiate between the public opinion
mm,
and the official opinion. The time that some countries are normalizing relations, some governments, sorry,
mm,
are normalizing relations with the colonial
mm.
apartheid regime of Israel, like the United Arab Emirates
Yeah.
and the Bahrain, and the Israeli President Herzog was like boasting of having photos with the king
Mm,
and with the emirs of Bahrain. We
mm.
see how the public, the Arab people,
Yeah.
how in the Qatar World Cup are raising the Palestinian flags all
Mm.
the time, singing for Palestine, chanting for
Exactly.
Palestine,
Mm. Exactly.
and the Israeli satellite channel and the
Mm.
Israeli journalist failed to have one Arab young man or one Arab person to speak well.
Exactly.
Every
I've seen that.
time,
I've seen that on the
yeah, every time the fans of the World Cup discover that this channel belongs to Israel, they would start chant, "Long live Palestine,
Mm, mm,
free Palestine.
mm.
There is no Israel." I think, my brother Naeem,
Yeah.
that this is a very important indicator,
Yeah.
and it shows how the split is big between the
Mm,
public Arab opinion and the
mm.
official opinion of some governments. We are not
Exactly.
talking about all governments. We are talking about the governments that normalize relations with Israel, taking into account that they normalize these relations not because they are interested on that, but because that was dictated on them by the American
Exactly.
administration.
Exactly.
And we know that these rulers and these regimes are colonized at the intellectual level by the United States. So the Palestinians still have hope, and this hope increased, especially today when we see the Arab masses supporting the Palestinian cause, supporting Jerusalem, free of the Zionist
Mm,
Israeli colonial apartheid regime.
mm.
And this reiterates that the strategic depth of the Palestinian cause is still the Arab and the Muslim world, just like the trust that we have in the people and the political powers of Pakistan, for example.
Exactly.
Pakistan is a large Muslim country, and we know how much the people of Pakistan are eager to see
Mm.
Palestine free of the Zionist regime. So it is very important, really, that the normalization with Israel does not turn into a people to people normalization, but it is officials to officials normalization.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it would be disastrous, and it would push the Palestinians to the wall, where they would have no hope.
Mm.
So the support that we have from our brothers, the public, I mean, Arabs, Muslims, and the friends around the world, even in the United States. And we see how the international solidarity movement is increasing and getting more
Exactly.
momentum day
Mm.
after day. This shows that we are on the right track, and we all remember that the South Africa apartheid did
Mm.
not collapse without international solidarity. The
Mm.
international solidarity and the boycott of that regime that uh, destroyed it and enabled the people of South Africa to achieve victory.
Mm.
So the Palestinians now have hope that this solidarity at the international level is increasing, whether in the United States, in Canada,
Exactly.
in
Exactly.
Europe, and everywhere.
Mm.
And we count, of course, on our brothers and our friends.
Mm. Well, thank you very much, Brother Osama. I hope to be in touch with you to get latest updates on the Palestinian issue. One idea was coming into my mind before I close this session, as we are running out of time. No government is permanent, but the people are always permanent. There's a plan of government and there's a plan of God. So both plan are working side by side. And this is a natural law, we have to keep in mind. And I think all the natural laws are working slowly towards the Palestinian cause. We can see that in the people's mind, we can see that in people's heart. Governments are here, may not be there tomorrow, but the people are here today and people will be there tomorrow. And I'm sure one day we will see the Palestinian cause to be materialized, inshallah. And I wish you and your family and your friends and your colleagues to have a safe environment there. And inshallah, we'll be talking to you again and to get more updates once in a while. And I thank you so much for your precious time. And with this, I would ask my audience to pray for the Palestinian brothers and sisters living in Palestine, occupied territories. And inshallah, with the next episode, I'll be back with you. Thank you very much. And thank you, Brother Osama.
Thank you very much. It has been a great honor for me to be on your program. Thank you.
Thank you.